Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And quick announcement, real quick. If you haven't already, I know some of you did buy it for the holidays. Pick up a copy of the Play Noir Anthology, 41 film noir-styled one-act plays written by playwrights from around the world. And let this be a formal announcement that we're coming back. Play Noir will be coming back to the Los Angeles area in November of 2025. We'll be doing a call for submissions for any playwrights out there that want to submit a film noir-styled one-act play. Please do your due diligence and research what film noir is, because we read everything from front to back, but sometimes some playwrights don't get what the genre is about. So on that note, my guest today is an alumna of the Playwrights Arena cohort at Arena Stage, a recipient of the Walter E. Dakin Fellowship from the Sewanee Writers Conference, and a Dramatists Guild Foundation traveling master. She is published by Concord Theatrical, Smith & Krause, and Applause Books. Her plays have been produced by Cincinnati Playhouse, Florida Studio, Florida Rep, Gulf Shore Playhouse, Signature Studio, and many others. Her play Alabaster received an 11-city rolling world premiere, the largest in national new play network history, and is now playing at the Fountain Theater in Los Angeles until March 30th. And this is where I screw up every single time because I meant to ask her how to pronounce it, and I'm going to go with it. Please welcome Audrey Cefaly. I know I botched it, didn't I?
That's pretty close. That's actually very close to the original Italian pronunciation back when, back before these Cefaly. Her name moved here. So Cefaly is
Cefaly. Gosh darn it. And that's what I said. I told myself it was Cefaly, not Cefaly. Gosh darn it. I'm sorry. I'm so bad at this. We've been doing this for 4 years now, and I still forget to ask the important questions.
You're doing great. It's always something people get a little tongue-tied with, even myself. And so anyhow.
I should do my due diligence to be prepped for this stuff, but I get so excited when these things happen. I've got so many questions. Audrey and I were talking before we started this, that this is the first time in 4 seasons that I've actually got to see the play before I got to interview the playwright. So there's some questions I'm going to ask regarding that, but there's so much I have to ask because you're outside of the bio that we read. There's so many different things that you indulge in that I'm fascinated by, and I can't wait to unpack. So first of all, did you get to see this production, by the way?
You're talking about Alabaster, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alabaster at the Fountain. Did you get how much did you get to see it, and how much were you involved? How
involved was I? I haven't seen it. I would like to. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it out to see it. But my writing partner and collaborator, Carolyn Messina, plays the role of Wheezy. And so sort of dramaturgically, she's sort of been a little bit of a liaison there. Okay. And so I've been getting some updates, and I also worked with the director on some big questions.
And on that? Not to interrupt, I'm sorry. Well, what are the big questions when it comes to this particular play and other?
It was ideas about like how it's going to work in the space. When they were doing casting, I recommended Carolyn. They auditioned other people and ultimately decided to go with Carolyn Messina in the role of Wheezy because, first of all, she's tremendous, and she also originated the role in the very first production at Florida Rep. And I think having her there on the ground has been maybe the biggest thing I could do, is to get, because she knows the play so intimately, and because she was such a big part of the genesis of the play and the evolution of the play. She's just instrumental. She's able to explain things at such a high level, and every playwright wishes that they had someone like this who could tell them what their play is actually about.
Sure.
The play has got talking goats, for instance.
We'll talk about it later.
And so what are the goats? What is the role of Wheezy? We can get more into that. It would be quite easy to look at a character like that at the surface and say, oh, she's just a narrator, or she's just this. Well, in working with Carolyn over the years, she was able to get me to see things in a much more pulled out, abstract kind of way. And I see now that Wheezy is, she's of the divine. She's not just a talking goat. So that's just one example. The casting.
Not to interrupt, I'm sorry, forgive me, because you're touching on things that because I've seen it are fascinating. So
right,
if Carolyn made you see that, were there things that changed later, or that just
absolutely
So, I mean, what I mean by that, did you rewrite certain lines compared to the original rendition and compared to where it is now?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
So I'm always looking for opportunities, first of all, and I'll mention this at the same moment. I was able to, because of the nature of the wildfires and some of the stuff that's going on politically, I was able with this production, with their permission, to actually change some of the lines that some of the characters had to sort of meet the moment. And I was very grateful to them for experimenting with some of that. But I'm always doing that. And with the character of Wheezy, you know, as we would roll across the country with this play, every production would teach me something new about it. And I would go back to Carolyn, because she wasn't in every production. She was in the world premiere, and she was able to see some of the other productions, and we would debrief after each one. And I would say, I think maybe Wheezy's this. And she'd say, no, I think Wheezy is this. And like in the world premiere, it was the very last rehearsal before we had our first preview. Carolyn and I had a revelation about how Wheezy is not just a goat that, you know, is a companion or is owned by this character of June that lives on this farm. She is of a higher purpose, right? She's of another realm. She's like a Mr. Miyagi or Yoda or Gandalf, right?
Sure.
It wasn't until that very last rehearsal that we began to understand that she can conjure things. She can make things happen, right? She's of a higher purpose. And so I remember during the very first preview, Jay Parrish, the director, had Carolyn have complete command of the stage. And so she was all over the place. She was here and here. She didn't just sit over on the side, right, and watch the goings on. She would enter June's room as if walking through walls, you know, and suddenly this appears and this appears. And these gestures began to evolve over the years as we would continue to work on the play. And when we finally sent the play to publication, she and I would very meticulously go through the stage directions for Wheezy and make sure that it was clear that, no, she's not out there doing abracadabra and now you see a painting. It's chill. It's on the down low. You know, she's just this creature that's makes sure that the audience and the characters need to see what they need to see when they need to see it. And so that's an example of some, well, to your original question, that's something that evolved, you know, the more she and I talked about it, the many thousands of hours that we talked about it, and the other characters too. That was one of the biggest things, and one of the things that we wanted to convey in the manuscript itself as it went to print was trying to find the words to express what Wheezy is, because she isn't just one thing. Right. And that was maybe one of the biggest challenges, sorting that out, because you don't understand that character. You don't understand a character like that until you've, you know, really let it sit with you for a long time. And then to actually find the words to express it in a script is nearly impossible. But we did our best, and we actually have plans now based upon discoveries in this production and these other productions that are going on. There's one in San Diego and one in Grand Rapids and one in Charlotte that opened this weekend. The findings of these productions are informing the next draft of the manuscript, even though it's in print. Wow. We like to return to it every couple of years and make sure that it's current. Yeah. Okay.
How has it evolved? I mean, obviously it was Florida Rep was the first production.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it as technical? Is all that technicality, all those, you know, as far as the screen, the screens, is that in the script, or is that all production design and choices that the director and the producers are making?
Well, I'll take one step back to answer that. First of all, just outright, the play started out as a two-hander. There were no goats, and if there were goats, they were just non-speaking goats. And then over the years, or over the year after the second and third workshop, Wheezy was like, I have something to say. And I said, you be quiet. You're going to be played by puppets. Like, this is a two-hander, you know? And she's like, no, I really have something to say. And so I went into the third workshop saying, hey, can we add another actor for this workshop? And the director was like, huh? And I said, well, I think Wheezy's talking now. And he's like, okay, I trust you. And we went into the workshop on the second or third day after I had written the guided imagery scene, which is this beautiful scene between June and Wheezy, where Wheezy asks June to imagine something better than what she's settling for at the moment, right? And June says, I don't know how, I can't, I don't see it. And Wheezy's like, really push. I want you to see outside of this, you know, this closed off life that you have. Look beyond all of that. I wrote that scene first. That was the first scene that had Wheezy doing any talking. And the director just went nuts for it. And he goes, we're going to need more Wheezy. And I said, more? You mean like a longer scene? And he goes, no, like all over. And that was Joe Calarco, by the way, just an inspired director. He got me to understand that Wheezy needs to be like a fully ratified, like fully all in character. And so I went back the next night of the workshop to my hotel room, and I added her at the very beginning of the play. And I just threw some lines out there, and the lines have never changed. And the lines were, hello, my name is Wheezy. I'm a goat. I'm aware that I'm a goat. And I was just trying to get something down on paper for that workshop that would suffice for the reading, but it turned out to be rather, people just loved how it opened. Here's the rules of the card game. Here's where we are. We're in Alabaster. I'm Wheezy. That's a goat. That's my mama. This is what's happening. And sorry, did you have a follow-up?
No, I don't want to interrupt, but I do have a question, but keep going.
And so in terms of the technical aspects of the play that you saw this weekend, as I understand it, their screens and their projections and things like that. We had some of that in the very first production, but every production has decided it's not hardwired in the script. I say that projections of goats or women or whatever's projected on the screens, I say that can be optional, because I don't. Okay. I want to remove barriers and obstacles for theaters. I don't want to encumber them with some technological or technological thing that they're not capable of. And so I put that's optional. So not every theater does projections, but the ones that do, and Florida Rep was the very first one, they'll pick and choose. Some of them actually have things projected on the walls of the theater, like when June has a PTSD episode. Some theaters have flashing red lights on the walls, and then there's just this wonderful scene where June has we're to understand maybe it's a nightmare, but I always left that ambiguous. She has this nightmarish scene, and there's all of this noise and all of this, a maelstrom of chaos, and this wicked storm happens, and every theater has sort of found their own way with it. Some of them with just basic lights, and then some of them just go, whole hog, as they say. But that's not something that I dictate. Even with some of the intimacy in the play, I always put in the script, look, here's a suggestion, right? Do with it what you will, because I don't want theaters thinking that they can't do a play because there's been the only thing in the play that is now hardwired into it that's not negotiable is the scars that are on June's face, her body. I put a note on the very first page of the script that says, this is a play about scars. If you cannot commit to the scars as written in this, in this section of it, if you can't, or referenced in the script, if you can't commit to those, if you can't commit to making sure that the audience really sees that June is very scarred, then don't attempt the play. Sure. Because that's what it's about. It's about scarred people, scarred women. And there have been moments when I've been pretty disappointed, and I look at a picture of a production or something where I'm like, I don't see that she's scarred at all. She looks perfectly fine. Right. Not that I was on the ground on every single production. It's had many, many productions now, so I can't be there for everyone. But I just want to encourage people to really embrace that.
How long has it been running?
It's been 4 years now, 4 or 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years since our first since the workshop at NNPN.
Okay. Why Wheezy's character opposed, and why not Bibbs as far as like vocal?
Well, I originally just thought that there were a couple of goats hanging around. And as I said, Wheezy at one point in a workshop got promoted to a speaking part. And then there was a time in one of the revisions where I thought, or actually it was that same workshop that I've been referencing, right around the time that I added Wheezy as a fully fledged character, I said to myself, this other character, this other non-speaking goat of Bib, like she's just making noises. She doesn't really have any lines, right? I said to myself, I need to raise the stakes for everyone, right? And so something happens to Bib, the old Bib is Wheezy's mother, right. Goat. And we understand that when Bib comes onto the stage that she is struggling. She might have dementia. She might be on death's door. We don't really know, but we know that she's struggling. Okay. And so I won't say what happens to Bib because I don't want to give it away, but it's something that really changes the course of the whole play, because when Bib transcends, something that sets the ball in motion for Wheezy to do what she needs to do, which sets the ball in motion for June to do what she needs to do, and Alice, and everything is kind of hinging on that. And that was one of the critical turning points in the narrative of the play, because it so clearly is a catharsis based on an actual thing that happened. Not right. Something someone saw someplace else or references or maybe is thinking about or internal. We physically get to see something happen in the play that changes the course of events. And it just felt so solid. And in the original production, Jay Parrish had this inspired, beautiful idea. And it was based off of a struggle that we had with a scene change, right? After Bib sort of transcends, he said, look, I don't know how to make this work, you know, from this scene to this. I think that we need like an extra little moment here, like a requiem or something. And I said, okay, I'll go back and I'll write you something. And so Bib has this glorious moment, and there are no words, but you understand that life will never be the same. But also I personally, and I'll speak for myself personally, when I experienced that moment with Bib, I feel hope. I feel seen as someone who has been a caretaker myself, and what it's like to finally be free, even if still, you know, rattled with guilt, but to finally be free of the pain. When you see someone struggle for so long and suddenly they're pain free, it's an exquisite relief, known only to people that have been there. You know, you never want the people that you love so much and cherish so much to leave, but you also don't want to see them in so much pain. Sure. Right. And that's what I think is so beautiful about Bib's journey, is that she is there to teach us about redemption and about release and the possibility for transcendence. Sure. And so though she does not have very many lines at all in English, you know, we understand that her purpose is profound. Right. Yeah. Okay. I do anyway.
No, 100%. And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, go see it. Sounds like it's playing in multiple places at the same time. So for those of you that are watching or listening, make sure you go check it out. This is not a non sequitur, but I'm just curious. Is Carolyn the only person who's kind of repeatedly performed in this, or have any of the other actors? I feel like I saw Erin, who plays Alice. I felt like I saw a picture of her from a different production, but I could be completely wrong. Not that it matters. I'm just curious.
I don't think she has.
Okay. Right.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. I don't know that anyone has repeated the role. What I do know is that there have absolutely been people who have been in my plays that have been in subsequent plays, and so it's nice to think that maybe they have, but really it's like, oh, this one actor was in, you know, this production of Alabaster, and then they went on to a production of Maytag Virgin, or, you know, a workshop of another play. And so I do have groupies.
Fair enough.
I'm probably more their groupie than they're my groupie, because I certainly have some that have stood out to me that I absolutely want to work with again, not just because of their acumen or their skill, but because they inspire me.
All right.
You know, doesn't every artist want to be around muses and yes, people that, you know, help push their work to the next level, not just that they're qualified, you know, behind the camera or on stage, but they actually have a contribution to make, and through their constructive contributions, the work is infinitely better. I work really, really well in collaboration with other artists. I'm not one of these writers that likes to sit back and write in a vacuum. I seriously need feedback, and I want the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I sort of believe that, like, there's nothing about the work that should be sacrosanct. There's nothing about it that should be so precious that you're not willing to jettison it for the greater good. The play does not care about your feelings, and you shouldn't care about its feelings. You know, get to the business of stripping it down so that what is left of it is the absolute core. You know,
sure.
And then it can really sing. The more it's laden down with all of your expectations and all of your desires and wants and, you know, precious language, the less people can really hear it. It's kind of paradoxical that way.
Sure. So I have two other questions, but something might stem from both of those before we move on. You know, I'm going to stick with Alabaster for a second, then I'm going to move on to some other things real quick. I noticed the hashtag Alabama Goat Play.
Yeah.
But is that really, because we talked about scars, but is it really?
It's kind of tongue in cheek, because I have an Alabama boat play as well. I play the Gulf.
Okay.
My play, the Gulf, is a 2-character play set on in a boat out on the Gulf, out on the shallows in the Tensas Delta of Alabama. And so when this came along, you know, I wanted a hashtag that people could be able to find the content easily, because if you think about it, when you write a play like Maytag Virgin, which is probably my most popular play, although Alabaster is quickly outpacing Maytag, if I'm being honest. Maytag Virgin is kind of easy to find if you're looking for it on the internet, because nobody ever, there's, you know, that's a very singular title. But Alabaster is a stone, it's a city, it's so many different things. So if you search for Alabaster on the internet or Facebook or social media, you're not going to find my play. You might, but you're going to find all these other things too. So I wanted an easy way for people to be able to find all the content, you know, of Alabaster that's out there. So I figured if I gave it a hashtag, and people would be more, and knowing that it was launching on a rolling world premiere, I thought I wanted something that all of the theaters could kind of have as a common thing. And when you do an NNPN rolling world premiere, you sort of share intel between the different theaters, so that not every single theater has to reinvent the wheel. It's kind of wonderful because the first theater kind of does it first, and then the second theater is like, so, well, how did you figure that out, or what did you do, and then we have meetings and people can learn from each other. And in one of these meetings, or it might have just been an email, I said, just so everyone knows, if you care to, use the hashtag Alabama Go Play, and that way we can all connect and find each other. And then it just caught on from there.
Do you think that that's what contributes to that outpacing? What do you think contributes to having a play like really get out there? Like, it sounds like it's really progressing, I guess, is
prolific.
No, I mean, it just seems like it's getting momentum. And so, what do you contribute that to? I mean, what advice do you have to other playwrights that might have something that all of a sudden like picking up steam? Is there a trick that you have?
I think I want to credit Alabaster's success to it. It's just an incredibly powerful read. Mm-hmm. Even when I read it now, and I could say that for myself. I can sit there and actually read it and go, it's just so powerful. But I hear it all the time. I get messages daily from people that say when they read it, they were just knocked sideways. I can't even tell you how many messages I get. There's something about the play when people read it, they are immediately hooked. It's vivid. The play is theatrical. Okay. It isn't just, my play Maytag Virgin is very popular. It's not theatrical the way that Alabaster is. Maytag Virgin is it's wonderful. It's beautiful. The language is there and all of that. But Alabaster speaks to designers because they're like, what a world to create, right? It quite literally is described in the script as a living canvas, right? So you have actors that are hungry for roles like these. You have designers that are hungry for opportunities like this. You have directors who are so excited for the spectacle aspect of it. And then I think it doesn't hurt that it's a play of strong women, 4 very incredibly strong women who all four of them transcend. And when do you get to see, maybe Lauren Gunderson, like when do you get to see a play with 4 women and none of the characters are throwaway. None of the characters are there as a device for another character. All 4 of these characters go someplace. All 4 of them walk through a wall of fire to get where they need to get. Sure. And so I think that my advice is, don't forget that, it's about the characters, really, truly. I'm not saying that your work has to be necessarily theatrical. I used to write very cinematically and sometimes still have a tendency to do so because I have this sort of romantic lyrical style, sentimental style sometimes. What Alabaster taught me, and actually even going back to my play, The Gulf, taught me was that it's okay to venture into the poetic. It's okay that your language isn't necessarily the way people necessarily talk in real life. It's okay that you have talking goats. It's okay that you make your own rules, because in the theater, we go there to get something unexpected. We go there to be shown something we can't see in film. Yeah. We go there to be transported in a way that only live theater can. And sure. If you're giving us something that we could have seen in a movie theater, I'm not saying it won't get produced, but I'm saying that fewer people are going to be interested in it because there's a whole host of people out there in the theater community that are looking for theatricality. Yeah. They want it to be something bold, where there are bold choices, and inventive. A lot of directors and artistic directors are looking for things that are inventive and bold because Sure. They know how to sell that, right? While also appealing to a broad swath of their subscribers. That's the other thing that's always at the forefront is I know that I know how to express that I want to sell this, but does it actually translate into ticket sales? Sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The other question I do have is, and I'm just curious of how that, if it's actor choice or if it's actually on the page that Virginia, who plays June, there were a lot of, I'll call it mannerisms or twitches. Yeah. I noticed things. I was watching her hands and her nervousness, if you will, for the character. Is that, did you write that in, or is that just and was her actress? Again, I know you haven't seen this production, but what's on the page as far as, you know, June's personality?
Mannerisms?
Yeah, it's like, hey, she's nervous, but you know, it's like, how much is on there? Is that in the character description? Is that in the stage directions? Just for, you know, for playwrights that are out there that might be learning that, you know, this is how to approach things like that. Because I know that sometimes we get carried. Like I find that new playwrights, they'll get really detailed about things, like takes a drink. Like, unless we're dealing with Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, you don't have to put certain things in there.
Right. Yeah, I have heard incredible things about the actor playing June, Virginia Newcomb. I've heard that she has these lovely mannerisms and little gestures and things that she does, and I'm going to I'll give her credit for all that, because certainly that's not hardwired into the script.
Okay.
What is hardwired into the script is that June is she's a real pill. She's five things at once. Okay. Wheezy describes her as just base level, just default level, a bitch.
Sure.
He's like, you know, I used to think that June's attitude was because of her injuries, but then I remembered, no, she's always been a bitch. And some people just are. Some people just are bitchy. Yeah. And so I just think at a base level that June is kind of just this irascible character, just kind of impossible, you know, character. We do understand that she has severe PTSD from the trauma of surviving a tornado that took out her family, right? And that is expressed very literally in the script when it says, okay, now June has, she's having a full blown, you know, now she's triggered by the bell on the camera, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or triggered by this or triggered by that. I will try to give, you know, wayfinders in the script so that people are oriented, because it that is incredibly difficult to convey in a script on paper, that this woman is by turns a bitch. Oh no, now she's just straight up having a PTSD. Oh, now she has this childlike behavior that we don't understand why she reverts to just this childlike behavior. You know, oh, now she's just straight up vanilla, like normal, vulnerable, sort of typical behavior. Sure. And now she's just goading this newcomer, right, in a kind of a sexy, probing way to see what she can dig up, right?
Sure.
So how do you express that in stage directions? I'll say it's incredibly challenging. But something about the way the character is written on the page kind of allows for an actor to explore the full expansiveness of their toolbox. Like if you are an actor that wants to just do the full spectrum of emotion or physicality, I think that this character invites that. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's on your website, you use the phrase stillness in storytelling.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I think that there's a lot in silence that, even if I take a moment right now, you see how that feels?
Yeah.
If a playwright can allow themselves those moments, if they can hardwire them into their script, maybe they write the word pause, or maybe they write the word silence, right? If you can allow for those moments and make sure that they're earned through the narrative, whatever, then amazing things can happen in those silences. Worlds collide in silences. People fall in love in a moment of silence. People truly feel seen in a moment of silence. I maintain that silence isn't used enough in theater. We see it in film all the time, right? Or maybe it'll have underscoring, you know, a montage or whatever, or a gesture or a glance or whatever. And obviously a lot of that stuff doesn't translate theatrically because you have a room full of people watching you. How do these micro gestures really translate? Well, no, they don't always.
Sure.
But if you can create the conditions where a character is communicating with another character non-verbally, I think it's almost more powerful than actual words. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is the distillation process. Which some people call editing, and editing is part of that. But the distillation process is something when you're writing, especially when you're writing for the stage, because every moment counts, where you really strip away the unnecessary words, sentences, comments, sarcastic rejoinders. Like, you know, I'm not saying there's not room for humor, but really ask yourself, does this little quip right here buy you anything? Or would it be more powerful if you just let the inciting line sit by itself with nothing in return? What if somebody throws a line out there and the other character, instead of saying something, there's just a glare, a glance, a look, right? What is that? Well, that's an opportunity, I think, for interesting stuff.
Sure. So on that note, those phrases or those reactions you just gave, do you write those, or do you just let that? Is that the freedom of the actor? Do you say a glare, a gaze, and then how much of that, if you don't mind, because I'm going to piggyback on that with something you said, how much of that is your job and how much of that is the player, or not the player, the actor's job? So where
I feel like I can get away with saying things like, Alice glares at June,
Sure.
Because to me, that's active. I'm not suggesting how she glares at her. I don't say glares at her. Well, I don't want to indicate how that occurs. I just want someone to know that something active non-verbally is happening. So I'll put that in there as a wayfinder. Sometimes, like in this new play of mine called The Garment, there's a moment when a character, it's a very tense moment between two characters, and a third character bites into a piece of celery at like the exact moment, So these two people, they're exchanging barbs, and then the character Val bites into a piece of celery, and of course, celery makes a very loud noise.
Better.
And then I write in the parenthetical, "It is poetry," right? It's so exquisitely timed that it is poetry. I'm not going to tell you how to bite the celery, but I just want people to know that there's a moment of non-speaking, something happening. And people that write farce, people that write comedy, certainly have the most challenging, I think, job when it comes to the physicality of characters and how things are, and how their physicality and how the things that they do non-verbally push the story along. How do you write that without insulting the actor? How do you say, I want you to do something really funny here, something with a door, and, how do you make it also so that when someone is reading the script, they're entertained by it and not just reading a bunch of mechanical information like an instruction book. So I think playwrights have the added challenge of making crafting a play that it's just as interesting to read as it is to perform.
Right.
We're almost writing two scripts, really, because it's different. Some people are going to read Alabaster and never have the chance to be in it or to see it on stage, and I want it to be just as enjoyable, if not more enjoyable, for them. With the script in their hand. So it's a balancing act. I'll say that.
Sure.
It's a balancing act of how much do you tell, your actor to do. But the main point is the less noise you have in your script, the more options the actor has. So say, for instance, you have a sentence that is 10 words, right? Oh, you look so pretty in that dress. Where did you get it? Right. Well, the actor maybe has a couple of choices, a couple of ways that they can play that line. But if you start reducing that to, oh, you look so pretty, or the more words you remove from that sentence, we still get the idea that this character thinks that character looks really pretty in that dress.
Sure.
But now they're getting only like a piece of a line or an idea of a line that used to be quite spelled out. And when you stop spelling things out with your dialogue, your actors really have the ability to shine because they can play it. I believe truly, and I've always said, the fewer words, the greater the choices, I think.
I agree.
Monologues and all that notwithstanding, I'm not suggesting that you have no language in your story. I'm saying when you get to the granular level of your lines, really, really think about stripping it down.
So on that note, if you're ending a line with ellipses,
yeah,
does that look? I can't sit there and say I know what the playwright intended. I don't know what the rest of that line is. I find that sometimes more amateur playwrights might use those thinking that, oh, of course they know what I'm thinking.
Right.
But are you using those strategically saying, I think you get where I'm going? Like, do you plant context clues and things where like you shouldn't know that if I end it with an ellipses, you know where I was going? Or do you sit there and say, hey, look, run with this. I don't know what the remaining the rest of that line was as a playwright. Like, I don't know what it is. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Does that, because again, I haven't explored this. So it's like, I love where you're going, where you're like, let's strip some stuff away. Right. But at the same time, how much of that burden is being placed on the actor?
So if I ever have something, if I ever end a line with an ellipses, it'll be pretty self-evident why it's happening. Maybe they're entranced by something. Maybe they're confused by something. And I'll try to add any kind of parenthetical or stage direction that helps contextualize what's happening. Because what I don't want to happen is, as you say, I don't want people to be confused by the ellipses, or maybe the cut off sentence or the hyphen or whatever. So I'll say things like, June looks at Alice with the ache of 1,000 years, June, I'll try to indicate what I think might be happening in that moment. But if it's a character who has trailed off because there's supposed to be actual language there and they didn't say the rest of it, that's challenging for an actor. And I try not to make it that, complicated for an actor. I don't want them to have to decode what the author might have thought there. But I think one of the things that we don't make use enough of in theater is overlapping and dual dialogue. I am pathological with dual dialogue, and some directors.
There's a lot of that in Alabaster. I noticed that. Now you mention it.
And because that's how people are in real life. They talk over each other all the time, and you say to yourself, well, there's all this dual dialogue. How do I, as an actor or a director, make sure that the audience hears what they need to hear? Well, the way you do that is you only overlap, you only dual the dialogue that is not necessarily that critical. I would never dual a section of dialogue that I felt like needed to be in the clear, as they say, for the actor to hear. And so I'll have a character step into a line like, this is really messed up, and then they start bantering back and forth with, oh, really, and something will bubble up. And then at the end, Wheezy will say, or just let her suffer weirdly in this weird bedroom of yours, until they die, and so we hear the beginning of it and the end of it. And then the middle of it is just chaos. And I love creating the opportunities for dialogue to erupt into chaos like that, because these are people who are talking over each other, and they're bitter, and they're not respecting each other. They're not stopping and waiting for the line to end. I find that really interesting. So I think that's another tool that playwrights could really, really maybe take a look at. If what they really want to do is get a lot of interesting stuff out there without the stops and starts and stops and starts. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Another thing that's in your bio or your website, writing regional. What are the benefits of writing regional?
Oh,
and do you recommend it? Do you find that like really it's helpful?
Not every one of my plays is an Alabama play, but a lot of them are. And I've just written the 4th full-length play in the canon of Southern work. You have the Gulf, Maytag Virgin, Alabaster, and now you have a play called Trouble. Okay. And if I know myself, I think Trouble is probably the 4th one, and then I'd like to maybe publish it as a collection. But those are stories kind of celebrating my time growing up in Alabama, working class people, waitresses, meal workers, teachers, bartenders, sewage plant workers. It's probably a bit like Samuel Hunter's, characters. They're not doctors and lawyers. They're working class people, and very singularly in a region of the country that, in my view, has just a beautiful language. The language on its face is so lyrical, and I feel like those stories come to me just so readily. And truly, you should write, if you put quotations around regionally, each person should write in a way that comes to them readily. And some playwrights will write with no particular locale in mind, no particular region in mind. Some of my plays are like that. They are placeless. They're just anywhere, right?
Anywhere USA, sure. Yeah.
My musical, The Last Wide Open, it's not embedded in a region. It's tonight we're set in the city of Cincinnati. Tonight we're set in the city of Chicago. But the specificity and singularity of the language from which I come allows me to just create very quickly and readily. And the language, the lyricism of the language of the Southern dialect marries so well with my penchant for hypnotic language. And Alabaster, more than any of my plays, makes use of poetic, lyrical, hypnotic language that really sort of attempts to pull you in and take you on a journey with images, pictures, suggestive language, so that when you get to the end of the play, there's something else that has happened besides you were just told a really interesting story.
Right.
And there are people that see Alabaster, and I'm not talking about one or two, I'm talking about hundreds of people that have seen Alabaster who have said, something happened to me when I was watching that play. I don't know how to explain it, but something happened to me. Sure. Or they'll say, I was really struggling with something, the loss of my mother, or my upcoming cancer treatments, or my sister, the trauma of being a caregiver. And they will say, something happened to me in there. I feel like I have been able to put the pieces of the puzzle together now, or I'm able to find the language for something that I didn't have. Now, a lot of people can say that probably about a lot of plays that they go see. Sure. But I think the suggestive language helps a lot. Yeah. If you can get an audience, much like in a hypnosis situation with a hypnotist, if you can get them in a suggestive state, the world and the words that they experience while they're in that suggestive state, they remember more clearly, more crystalline almost. It's something that happens with the entranced mind state. That's why they say follow the whatever it is, keep your eye on the thing. Keep your eye on the thing. Well, that sounds like malarkey, but what it's really trying to do is to get you to relax, pull you in, right, and get your mind really open and available for what's coming. And the hypnotic language of the South, I think, does that just intrinsically. And then when you do it with purpose in a narrative, we can all speak to that. Who among us hasn't said, you go to a Tennessee Williams play and the language is so heightened, right? You're in Williams territory now. Yeah. Like you sit there and you wonder, you're watching Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and you're like, why do I feel the way I feel when I watch Tennessee Williams? Yeah. That's why he uses hypnotic storytelling devices in his plays.
How, because I noticed you have one on your website, how important do you think an artistic statement is?
When I think an artistic statement is the most important is when you've sort of started to dabble a little bit, when you're first starting out. Well, it can be useful at any point in your career. But I remember there was a time when I was like, well, I wrote that, and then I wrote that. And now this theater is asking for an artistic statement. How do I know what my statement is? How do I know? Yeah. And I had to sit down and look at my body of work, sit down and look at everything that I had done, everything that I had written, and say, how does it all connect? What does this mean in terms of my humanity? What does this mean in terms of my purpose in the world? I'm going to have to pause for 1 second.
Sure.
I'm just in the middle of a recording. Are we going to be able to edit this a little bit? I'm sorry.
Well, I don't edit. You're fine. Trust me. Okay. There's so many. Trust me. There's so many. The only time I've edited is when I had somebody collapse in the middle of the interview. Right. But no worries. No worries. About this. No we just don't. Those are the things we love.
Okay. This is my dog. So I just think it's important to take stock of what you're about, like as a human, because really your work is an outcrop of your humanity. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. Why are you writing this kind of story? Why are you writing so prolifically all the time? Why do you sit down every day? What is your compulsion, right? And if you say, oh, I just like writing comedy, why? Ask yourself why. Where does it come from? Is it part of your pathology that you need to make people laugh all the time? You want to live in a world where it doesn't hurt so much, and so you add all this pathos to your comedy. You want to, as in my case, I want to take away some of the pain of the world. I'm a child of therapists and teachers. And so I have this natural inclination to want the world to have a little less pain. I want to do something to take some of it away if I can, if I have the ability to. And so when I sat down to write my first artistic statement, I just looked at everything, not just my plays, but everything about me, everything that I'd ever written, every poem I'd ever written. And I was like, oh, I see what's going on. I traffic in grief. I want to know about why people suffer. I want to understand the nature of guilt in relationships and what drives people to make the choices that they do, to stay in dead end relationships, to stay in dead end jobs. Where does that come from? And so I feel like for me, it's been critical in understanding the world around me, to be a better human, to collect the words and the vocabulary to talk about grief and the suffering of the world. So to me, it transcends the work itself. It's the idea of wanting to be the most best kind of human that you want to be in the world. Your art is an expression and an outcrop of that. So when you walk into a room, people should recognize your temperament and your vibe as, oh, I'd know you anywhere, because you are your writing, and your writing is you, or your art. It's not just for writers.
Sure, but I don't know. There's an approach that I have where it's like, F you, that I have to let my work speak for itself, that I have to justify, or I have to present what you know what I mean? I don't know. There's something about
worse.
There's something pretentious about it. Like, especially when you're submitting something, say, oh, well, we need to know. Read my freaking work. And if it stands out and it's worthy of that, you need a statement from me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sometimes a hat is just a hat. Why are you at? And I have said this to people. Tell me the meaning behind so-and-so. It just is. Right. It just is what it is, Yeah. And, my dramaturg, Carolyn, will say, no, we talked about it. Remember, it means this. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have as good of a memory as you do, and my memory is less and less these days.
Those damn stubborn goats.
So, yes, is there something a little pretentious? And I've said to Carolyn, I was like, assigning a meaning to something that I don't necessarily know is true. That just feels a little fraudulent to me, trying to always justify, like, why goats? Well, why goats? Why are there talking goats?
Look, real quick.
I remember I was at a retreat and somebody did a thing about Japanese no theater and how they use, and so I thought, okay, maybe there's an animal in one of my plays that's talking. There's not some profound reason why it's a goat more than any other, although my dramaturg, might argue with me, so
it's her role. Yeah. But I mean, I'll be honest with you, and this is the second time that I've had to humble myself, I suppose, because I'm not the biggest fan of personification of inanimate objects or animals that are portrayed by actors. Bernardo Cupri, I believe, he did Crabs in a Bucket, and I'm like, I don't like it, dude. I think it's stupid. I don't get it. It doesn't work. And then I went and saw it. I'm like, all right, never mind. I take it back. And I stand corrected with this as well. And I'm like, as soon as it happened, I was like, I'm a goat. I'm like, gosh, darn it. Are you freaking kidding me? And it was effective. So I have to stand corrected about that. Tell me about playwright vocabulary. And what does that entail?
So that's really simple. That was me never having taken a playwriting class or any.
Have you ever since? Still? Good for you. No, and that's
I've never. Have I looked into MFAs? I have. And here's what I found out. They're very expensive.
Yep.
And also, I never finished my undergrad. And so there's some programs that are like, well, you need to finish your undergrad. I'm like, do I really want to finish my undergrad just to get an MFA in playwriting? Do I really want to spend however many tens of thousands of dollars? But I would find myself in rehearsals with very experienced directors using words that I had come up with on my own. Like, I remember being in a rehearsal at Cincinnati Playhouse, and I said to the director, the scene needs more torque, or, the pileup, and he would say, what is this? What are these words you're using? And I realized, oh, not everybody understands what I'm saying. It makes perfect sense to me because this is a word I gave to that. But probably if I'd read a book about playwriting, I would be using the proper, normal, whatever. But so these words made sense to me. And so I would be like, I would use it with my dramaturg. I would use it with Carolyn Messina, or I would use it, in a room. And I would be like, I really like how, people would laugh. They would go, what did you just say? I said, fruit flying. That thing where you give a character like a recurring nuisance. Like the nosy neighbor that's always taking his trash out right at the moment that you want to come out and have a glass of Chardonnay on it. Like, isn't that convenient? Right? That's fruit flying. Well, it's a funny term and it's easy to remember and it's a great device. And so I just started writing them all down because I thought if I was just starting out, I would want to know some of these ideas. And most of them have to do a good portion of the terms have to do with editing. Right? Once you have the narrative sort of figured out, it's okay. Now take a look at these terms for distillation purposes, for editing purposes, and go back through go back through your manuscript and look at each one of these words and say, do I have some of this in there? Do I have some of this in there? And for me, they've been highly impactful. When I just follow my own vocabulary list, the work gets better. The work gets tighter. The work gets more tension. Tensioning, that's a word that I use. I don't know what other playwrights use for that, but tensioning is like removing all of the noise. The more you reduce, the more you remove, the greater the tension.
Sure.
I just know that to be true. And so I wrote it down. And people have found it useful.
Is this, forgive me, because when I was going through things, I'm like, I've got to ask about that. It's a book that you have out?
No, it's, it's right now, it's just on my Substack and also on my website. You can find it on my website. There's a Playwright toolbox section on my website. You can find it there, but it's also on my Substack, which is free. Which
is what I wanted to get into next, and good to know, so we can segue into that.
Sure.
How to Playwright.
Yeah.
Which I think is what your Substack's called, correct?
How to Playwright. Yeah, I started it a couple years ago because I think I was just really kind of testing it out. It wasn't with the intention of like any sort of big, mission or anything. I was just like, maybe somebody can use some of this useless information that I have around in my brain. And so I started it.
Probably was more useful than it is.
Yeah, some people have found it useful. And it's developed I have quite a following now on my Substack. And I try to write, I have said that the content on my Substack is free and always will be. Because for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't think that people should have to pay for basic information, right? Mm-hmm. Second of all, I don't necessarily consider myself a scholar, right? This is just stuff that works for me. And if I can impart information on what it was like for me to have my first Laureate production, what it was like for me, to develop a vocabulary, or how I distill a narrative, how I write the 10-minute play. This is just how I do it. And I'm also I don't write every single week. And so I never wanted to charge for something with the expectation sure. that you're going to get a dispatch every Friday. That's not Audrey Cefaly, but I'll give you some cool stuff when I can give it to you. And here it is. And it's free, and tell people about it, and it's been really wonderful. Substack is a great safe space as spaces go out there. I've had a lot of luck with it. It doesn't seem to be too much of a headache, not too intrusive. And they're adding little interesting things all the time. There's like a notes section now that didn't exist when I first started out, so it feels more social. Okay. Notes to me feels like a social media component of the platform, where you can just like, here's what I'm thinking today, or just as you would like a Twitter or a Facebook post or something like that. And that is a funnel for new traffic to get to the actual business end of the newsletter. So I think it's great. And I've encouraged other people, to think about Substack, because it's completely free. It's very easy to use. And then this year I started adding another entirely new section to the newsletter, which is I list the major playwriting opportunities when they're coming up. Things I feel like people should be submitting to, like all the major playwriting festivals and the pretty critical, very well-known, opportunities. It's stuff you can find out there. But sure. If I know about an opportunity, it's really important not to gatekeep, oh, here's an opportunity and I'm going to submit to it and not tell anybody else. Well, if your work is good, it's going to float to the top, regardless if you tell sure. your 1,000 subscribers or however many, and so I try not to gatekeep. I want everyone to know about these opportunities. And so I'll post those as they come along. Okay. Again, I may forget one and it's not a perfect science. But that's again why I offer it for free. And I have paid subscribers. Sure. They really believe in the content. I'm very fortunate that I can make a little bit of money doing it. So
that's what we all hope to be able to do. Yeah. I think you touched on it, but I'm going to revisit it. What are you working on now?
So, the play that I started on recently, I'll say Trouble. I mentioned Trouble. But the play that I'm starting on now is a play called The Believers. And I think it's going to be a 4 or 5 character play about this family, this joined family. It's a dad who's a flat earther and a mother who is an evangelical Christian. And his daughter is a young Greta Thunberg sort of character. She considers herself, an expert on climate, and she's a very outspoken proponent of, climate change, for climate change action. And the son is just kind of this shiftless. He doesn't really know what his life is supposed to be. He's struggling with grief because that was something that happened to his girlfriend.
Sure.
And so these two families collide. But it's sort of a play on, all these people that are very serious about the things that they hold very dear and their values, and what happens when these two factions are sort of pushed into the same household together and their beliefs are challenged. And I've written a few scenes. It's still taking shape, but I can see it, but I don't see that it's a play set in Alabama. And interestingly, I think it's a play set in the Midwest, maybe Minnesota.
Sure.
I'm not really sure yet, but so that's what I'm working on now with my dramaturg Carolyn. Is like, all right, tell me where you are with it, because it's been long enough. You haven't written in a couple months. What's going on? She wishes I would write every day, but that's just not how I work.
That's all right, as long as you got somebody holding you accountable.
No shit.
Where can people find your work?
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you want to buy my plays, you can go to TRW, or you can go to Concord Theatricals. You can look me up. If you just search for my name, you'll find my website. You'll find my Substack.
Which we'll have listed in the show notes down below.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then if you're anywhere near Los Angeles, you really need to get to the Fountain Theater to see Alabaster. It's getting rave reviews.
We'll have that as well. Tickets. We'll have a ticket link down below as well.
Great.
I encourage you all to see.
And there's also a production of Alabaster happening right now in Grand Rapids, and one
we'll
in Charlotte.
include that too. And where? And you said Charlotte?
Charlotte. Yeah.
We'll include all three of those. We'll make sure. Yeah. And the how
I would include San Diego, but they just closed. So, but they were getting great reviews too. But yeah,
I would imagine so. And then finally, are you on the socials?
I am social. You can find me on Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You're going to see a lot of my art there. I'm a physical artist, so you can tell from behind me. I'm a painter, and I do other things. So you'll find some of that on there too. My husband and I do a lot of art collaborations, and so
how many of the pieces that are in Alabaster are yours, if any?
Oh, do you mean those pieces of art? I would love to say that they're mine, but wonderfully, each particular theater, they collaborate with local artists, which is something that that Carolyn had envisioned from the start. Was how cool would it be if every production collaborated with actual artists in their community to create this art, rather than it just coming from one person in the scenic design, but actually worked with artists and it became meta. And so I wish that I could take credit for the art, but no, they have a local artist for that.
I think that's brilliant. And if at the end of the run and things go up for sale, I might have to go over there and grab a key piece or two.
Some theaters do that. I'm not sure what Fountain is doing, but wouldn't that be cool?
It would be.
The artist, yeah. I need to ask about that.
Yeah.
But that would be wonderful. And I've been fortunate enough to be gifted handfuls of art from artists across the country. My apartment is filled with pictures of goats that were painted at various productions, and so I'm the happy beneficiary of that. Keep them coming, guys.
I like it. Well, Audrey Cefaly, thank you for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you too. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And as a reminder, Play Noir is coming back this year, so be sure to visit www.punkmonkeyproductions.com. Keep an eye out for that call for submissions if you're interested in submitting any film noir style one-act plays. And in the meantime, until we see each other again, keep writing.
Keep writing.